Hello! Hi, everyone. Are we live? We're live. I can see it. The red button is here. Okay. Hi. Welcome to Teaching Tuesday. Look at this. Jerry's here, and she's already super excited. And so am I. Always, per usual, to Teaching Tuesday. Welcome. I'm filling these comments. We got to do our roll call, see who's here. Hi, Adam. Hi, Scarlett. Hi, Lori. Oh, I'm loving all this. It's a dreary day here. So I got my little cup of warm up as we go, and I got my teaching sweater on. Anybody out there wearing teacher sweaters? I already pictured that everyone already does, so we're good. We got Connecticut here. Welcome. Let us know. Remember, we got to find out. All right, are we teachers? Are we students? Are we enthusiastic lifelong history learners? Are we tuning in to our very first Teaching Tuesday? Or is this our, what? I don't know. I lost count. 6, 7? I mean, we've done a ton. So let us know. And for those tuning in for the first time, I mean, I know I say this every week, but you're in for a treat because we got a great topic to talk about, and we're going to be showing my favorite primary source of the Mount Vernon collection. So like, oh, I'm so excited. So if you thought that my enthusiasm level has been a bit much these previous weeks, just you wait for today. Okay, so hi, Christy. We got teachers from Reno. Oh, and look at this. GWTI, summer. We love our teachers. Yay, I found, where is, I'm pulling him up. Jerry's a student on her aunt's phone. That's dedication, and that is the dedication of Teaching Tuesdays that we love. That enthusiasm is absolutely radiating from all you guys here, and I can't wait. We've done some fabulous topics in the past, and today we're going to keep that theme going. You've seen that we're advertising that we're talking about the Constitution today. Yeah, and not only are we talking about the Constitution, we're using our Academy Award, Emmy Award. It's a full EGOT award-winning video of A More Perfect Union. So we're going to be showcasing a great big chunk of that. So I'm loving, we got more high school history teachers. Adam, I'm so happy you're back. Look, guys, everyone say hi to Tiffany. Hi, Tiffany. We got a first timer here. You're going to love it. And again, you're here for a treat for our very special primary source. I'm not even going to tell you what my favorite primary source is. You're going to have to wait. It does relate to the Constitution, so there's a little bit of a hint. Oh my gosh. All right. So we got, what is this? Who is this? All right. I just saw. We got San Diego in the house. We got Connecticut. We got East Coast, West Coast. We got a reenactor, Tony Holbrook from Ohio. So we're hitting Midwest. We're hitting everybody. Great. Sue, I'm giving a St. Louis shout out because that's my hometown and we always got to make those connections. So we got a great day planned. If you all remember last week, we discussed the topic of slavery, and I phoned a friend. I brought in one of my best friends in the entire world, Jesse McLeod. Well, that went over so well. We got so many comments about people loving the topic and loving the talk with an expert. We thought, why not phone a friend again? Because I don't want to brag, but I got a lot of friends. And the cool thing about working at a place like Mount Vernon is I got a lot of friends that are curatorial experts, archaeology experts, architectural experts. You've been seeing a lot of these on other live streams. And so the one that I'm going to call in is one of our research historian experts. His name is Dr. James Ambuski. Although I think for our Teaching Tuesday, he's going to let us we can call him Jim, right? Because we're all buddies here. And so I'm going to go ahead, dial up some numbers here. Just it's a long area code. Okay. It's ringing. So Jim?
Hi, Sadie. How are you?
Hey, Jim, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Yeah, I must be on speakerphone because that's wonderful.
That's not the wrong number you dialed there.
Well, you know, I still have my St. Louis area code, so it gets a little long to call out a state.
I see.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm pleased to see so many people here, and especially a lot of folks from Ohio, which is where I'm from. So shout out to
Oh, good. Yeah. So you've been watching our roll call, have you?
I have indeed.
Yeah, we got a lot of people. I saw a couple other St. Louis visitors. Ooh, we got a South Carolina. Hi, Becky. We're gonna say hi to Pat in Savannah, Georgia. Oops, wait. Okay, sometimes I forget. I get so excited I don't take it down. So yeah, we got a lot of viewers, and Jim, I think they're pretty excited about today's talk.
It seems like people are pretty pumped. So I'm delighted to be here. You know, usually I'm either hosting something like this or I'm behind the camera. So it's nice to be the entree as opposed to
and actually, let's talk about that because some people in our comments might recognize not just the pretty face that we're looking at here, but the smooth voice. Where might people be recognizing you from?
Well, I'm very fortunate to lead the Center for Digital History at the Washington Library. I'm also the host of the podcast Conversations at the Washington Library. And so I've been hosting that for the last year or so, and we've got about 100 episodes with leading historians, teachers, people who are interested in and working in the area of early America. So if folks have questions about the Constitution, what we're talking about today, there'll be several podcasts there that they can find more information about. These are all family friendly, so please do tune in with your kids. We are not rated E, so we're in good shape there.
Oh, great! That was going to be my next question. Can we get a rating on the podcast? But sure. You covered it. So Jim, as I mentioned, we're about a couple minutes away from launching our award-winning movie, right? Mm-hmm. We've all got our popcorn ready. We're about to dive into the topic of the Constitution. But one thing I'd love to talk out with our viewers, I'm pointing over here like you can see where my comments are, is what's going on before the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because this great movie that we're going to watch, it's about 20 minutes long. So we're just going to do some segments of it. But we're going to pop in to the beginning of the convention. So when things start to happen, so we're going to miss that first chunk. So I'd love to talk to our viewers here and kind of use you as that expert to chime in. What's going on before the Constitutional Convention goes on? So if we can all just kind of recap where we are in American history. Why did they call this convention? What led up to it? What issues did we have? What form of government did we have? Let's just kind of do a little bit of a refresher as to where we are. So pop in those comments so we can see.
Yes, this is what historians call the critical period between the end of the American Revolution and the Constitutional Convention and the formation of the new government. And so, why was it critical? What was at stake? I'm curious to see what you all think.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good
one. Pop up. Yeah, Adam's got a great comment. The 13 states were behaving more like 13 separate colonies. Countries. Sounds pretty critical to me.
Well, and that's an important point too, right? Because in very real respects, these were 13 independent republics. This is not a union, a permanence at this point.
Awesome. Yeah. So it looks like Cindy is kind of adding to that. The states were governing themselves. There was no consistency. It was 13 different nations, 13 different republics, as you said, all kind of, as Jeanette Patrick mentions, under one form of government, the Articles of Confederation. But that necessarily talk about the Articles of Confederation, Jim, because if you have 13 states under it, mm-hmm. what was the problem with it?
Well, that's a great question. And so the Articles of Confederation, some people have described it as the United States' first constitution. The big thing to know about the Articles is that it is a product of the American War for Independence. It was an alliance created to help the states coordinate the war effort against the British. And it had very limited powers. It couldn't levy direct taxes, so it can't collect revenue. Basically, Congress had to ask the states to give money. You can imagine how well that went on a regular basis. It was run by a committee, essentially, a committee of states. There was a president of Congress, but there was a committee who oversaw, basic operations. And so when the United States is negotiating with foreign powers, their foreign powers are like, can you just give us like one person to talk to? That would be terrific. What is this committee you're presenting with? This makes no sense whatsoever. And you can also think about the Articles as basically a peace treaty between those 13 independent republics. Yes, it says Articles of Perpetual Union, but it's much more of an alliance, much more of a peace treaty between these states to coordinate certain efforts. It is, as we like to call, a union without power. It can't do much, and it's very frustrating for many people.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of looking at a wartime government, so it's not looking for that. It's not fulfilling that long-term. We made the peace, now we got to secure it, right? We got to secure that future. Awesome. I liked what Teresa said. She was totally, going along with what you were saying, is that they're negotiating with each individual person, or each individual state. They're supporting with their own monies. Trade routes are back and forth. Sounds like chaos, and sounds like a great time to figure out how the countries, governing elites are going to come together and work this out. Mm-hmm. If you're ready, I think this is a great place to start our video. Viewers, I hope you're ready. We're going to watch a bit of a chunk to find out more about the Constitutional Convention. All right, so we are going to be really good with our technology here, and we're going to be really patient with me as I take a moment. So, all right, without further ado, Jim and I are out, and the Constitution's in.
Throughout May 1787, delegates from all over the Union arrived in Philadelphia. Luminaries like Benjamin Franklin and rising stars like Alexander Hamilton were in attendance. There were 7 former governors, including Virginia's Edmund Randolph, and jurists like Pennsylvania's James Wilson. And there were relative newcomers like James Madison. Eventually, 55 men would serve at the convention. And chairing this body, George Washington. Together, they had won the war. Now, they needed to secure the peace. Foreign powers had predicted the American experiment would fail. This convention sought to prove the world wrong. The delegates agreed that they would write a new constitution. It was risky. They were only authorized by Congress to suggest amendments to the existing Articles of Confederation. To proceed, they would work in secret. Windows were shuttered despite the summer heat, and oaths of secrecy were taken. It was thanks to James Madison's diligent note-taking that we even know what took place. There was little unity over many of the most important questions confronting the delegates. Smaller states, which had enjoyed equal representation in the existing government, feared they would lose sovereignty to the dominance of the larger states. Delaware's Gunning Bedford warned that the small states would find some foreign ally if their autonomy was threatened. The larger states wanted representation based on population. James Wilson reminded the delegates, "Can we forget for whom we are forming a government? Is it for men or for the imaginary beings called states?" As the debate went on, 2 delegates from New York walked out, believing the convention had exceeded its mandate. If others left, the convention might collapse. Overseeing the debate, Washington grew anxious for a solution. Then Roger Sherman of Connecticut arrived with a proposal. It would come to be known as the Great Compromise. Sherman proposed a legislature split into 2 bodies. One would allocate representatives based on a state's population. The other would treat states as equals. Here was the birth of the House of Representatives and Senate. The Great Compromise broke the deadlock between large and small states, but left them with a new, troubling question. The next challenge: how would enslaved people be counted for purposes of representation and taxation? In 1787, slavery existed in every state except Massachusetts. But the institution was most heavily concentrated on the plantations and farms of the southern states. This painful reality raised the question of how should states determine population. More to the point, who counts as a person? The southern state delegations, led by Charles Pinckney and Pierce Butler, sought to have slaves counted as part of their population, even though they were considered to be property by their owners. The Southern delegates threatened to oppose any actions that would limit or constrain slavery.
In the extreme.
Some Northern delegates were incredulous. Once again, faced with the threat of a mass defection and a doomed convention, the delegates reached yet another compromise. They agreed to count all slaves, for purposes of representation, as 3/5 of a person. Looking back through time, this 3/5 decision looks like a moral failure. But to the delegates, many who assumed slavery was already fading away, this compromise was deemed necessary if the Constitutional Convention was to have any chance of success. Of course, what the delegates could not see is that this new Constitution left millions in bondage and failed to extinguish the slow fuse that would ignite in bloody civil war 70 years later. The last challenge: would the American people accept a powerful executive? The Articles of Confederation lacked one. Each state could overrule the others. There was nobody to transcend states' interests and represent the nation's. Hamilton and Madison argued a powerful national leader was necessary. Madison's proposal, the Virginia Plan, offered a powerful single executive balanced by a representative legislature and a judiciary. Others, including Edmund Randolph, questioned the nature of this executive, worrying that too much power in the hands of one person could lead to monarchy. Even Benjamin Franklin expressed concern. Though he expected Washington would likely be the first to serve as the chief executive, he worried that nobody knows what sort may come afterwards. But in the end, the proposal for a single executive carried, based largely on the hope that one man would lead the new government: George Washington. The public had been kept in the dark for months. What had the greatest minds of their country, their beloved General Washington, conceived? By the time the Constitution was ready for signing, 42 of the original 55 delegates remained in Philadelphia. Washington signed first, followed by the rest. 3 delegates, George Mason, Elbridge Gerry, and Edmund Randolph, refused to sign, protesting the lack of a Bill of Rights. What they signed contained a mere 7 articles, 7 pieces that together formed a new government. The first 3 defined the branches of government, creating checks and balances between them. 3 more outlined the relationship between the states and the federal government, along with the process for making amendments. And the 7th established rules by which the new Constitution could be adopted. The reaction was mixed. The Confederation Congress briefly considered censuring the delegates for exceeding their original mandate. But they concluded something needed to be done, and that this new Constitution was the best option. The states were called upon to form conventions to ratify or reject the new charter. At least 9 states had to approve for it to take effect. Any less, and the Constitution would be dead.
Okay, seems like a great place to stop. Did I lose Jim? Jim.
Hey there.
Oh, thought I lost you. So what'd you think of the video?
That is a very good film. They did an excellent job of both explaining the major issues behind the Constitution and how we arrived at it, but also visually showing you what was at stake for the individual states as well.
Yeah, hence the EGOT of the Emmys, the Golden Globes, the Oscars, and the Tonys. It's somehow won on Broadway. It cleaned up all the awards, and it really must have hit a nerve with our viewers because we got close to 200 people watching, and I think we got 6 comments throughout the entire thing. They were enthralled. They were fully deep into this video, and it is a great film. And actually, I saw some, and if some teachers want to comment too, we saw some comments earlier, but how many people use this with students or with kids? I mean, I think that one of the great things about this video is that, as you say, it visually kind of breaks down the problems that the country was at, and then the solutions, but also the divisiveness of that convention as well. So yeah, we'd love to hear if teachers use it. Because Jim, that was not just a friendly, let's meet for a few weeks, put some ideas down on paper.
No, there were really serious issues facing the United States. I mean, we did touch on some of them when we talked about the Articles of Confederation, but I think it's worth thinking about again as we move into the second half of the program. As I said, the United States under the Articles of Confederation could not levy a tax, so it could not pay back the war debt. The states had contracted debt to fight the war. So at Congress, you can't tax, you can't pay back the states. That's a real problem. Another pressing issue facing the United States, there are agrarian rebellions in Virginia and in Massachusetts. The government, the federal government at the time, such that it was, had really no power or authority to put down those rebellions and enforce its own authority. And so there were real challenges, and to say nothing of the fact that everyone in Europe thinks that the United States is going to fall apart, and they're waiting for it to happen.
Absolutely. And I think what I find interesting, or what I'd love to talk with you about, kind of are some of the comments that were made during the convention. And we are getting a lot of teachers, Aaron Heaney, Keith Robinson, Judy Scarbeck, April Watkins, who are using this with their students to connect with them. Because that's what Teaching Tuesday is all about, connecting with those kids.
Oh, yes.
But so there are these problems going on, and they're not able to raise money under the Articles of Confederation. They're not able to raise revenue, but yet at the same time, why during the convention then and I'd love to hear from our viewers on this too, why do you think they're still at that point, still so scared of a strong executive branch? I mean, if that large judicial branch of 13 equal colonies, everyone has the same power, can't make decisions, they can't sign treaties, they can't raise money, if they're having all these issues, and again, I'm putting this out to the viewers, why are they nervous about this executive branch? Why is that such kind of a revolution idea, scary notion to put out?
Yeah, not only that, I mean, strong central executive, but also strong central government. Let's, think about that as well. What's at stake?
Yeah.
People got some good ideas coming in.
Yeah, Jim, they're coming. I can hear the typing. I'm that close. The viewers and I are that close that I can feel their typing. I mean, look, here they are.
Well, yeah, Culpepper, if I recall correctly, this individual is in the United Kingdom. I think I saw that person drop the UK symbol in a little bit earlier. But yes, they have feared abuse of power. All right, let's press.
Kind of adds to that. They're too scared that threat of the monarchy. I mean, this is great. Oops.
Right.
Yeah.
Distrust of centralized power. They didn't want another king. Cynthia's absolutely right. There's still the memory, the idea that George III was quote unquote a tyrant, which is quite frankly much more propaganda on the patriot part than it was in reality. But there's still those fears of creating a central authority that could be oppressive in the ways that the British government was to the colonists in the 1760s and early 1770s.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a fear, but ultimately kind of the convention comes together, they decide, Madison, Hamilton, we saw those big names. They push for it, that Virginia plan goes through, so they end up getting the whole checks and balance system. Yeah. And so that comes out, so that comes through. We saw it's in the articles, the Constitution's ratified, or the Constitution, it's ratified by the convention, but that's not the end point. Correct?
Correct. And maybe actually before we get to the ratification process, I mean, we did have some good questions about the 3/5 compromise.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we should talk about that. So why? I'll throw it out to the group here. Why did they insert a 3/5 compromise? What was the purpose of doing that?
Oh, that's great. I love when we put it back on the viewers. I'm just trying to look for that comment that I was going to pull up. Okay. Well, okay. Well, we got it. But yeah, absolutely. So I hear the typing again. So it's coming, Jim. The typing is coming.
Oh, that's some great questions and great comments so far. So this is fun.
Well, and that's one of the highlights of Teaching Tuesday. While our best buddies are writing, that's one of the best things is that we get full interaction. On these days. I mean, all our live streams from Mount Vernon are interactive, but this one we're really able to connect and hear about their thoughts and get them involved in the conversation. I'll pull up a few of these that are starting to come up.
Yep.
That's a great.
Strong central government possibly favor northern versus southern states. Southern states wanted more seats in Congress. Great.
Here's a good one that actually puts the number, like puts a reason for the numerical.
Yeah, and those are all good comments, and in a sense they're all correct. I mean, one of the things that the Southern delegates are worried about is that the northern states will have more power in Congress because they have a greater white population relative to the African American population. Whereas, of course, in the southern states, and again, we should be mindful that slavery is predominant in the southern states, but it's not necessarily the only place where slavery is. There is still slavery in the north at this point. But southern delegates are worried because there is a smaller white population relative to the African American population, that they will have less power. The other problem for the southern delegates is that if they do count African Americans as a whole person, well, then that sort of undercuts the argument that African Americans can be enslaved as property and that there is an equivalence between a white person and a black person. And that's just not going to fly for Southern delegates. And so the 3/5 compromise is brokered by a Northern delegate and a Southern delegate to achieve the Constitution and ensure that it does pass.
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting way to look at it. I had always known the kind of background about making sure the population, for that votes in Congress, but never about, the higher message that would send about equating the equality between a person and a person. So I thank you guys for asking that question. I mean, I think that's a really important topic and one that I'm glad that we pulled out for this and that's talked about in the video.
Sure.
So ratification happened. So, okay, Jim, I'm sorry. I know that we're supposed to talk about the state ratification, right?
No, we're
and we're good. And, but can't we just say like, hey, they're ratified, like the states, like it gets sent out to the states. They have some debates because today we're looking at my favorite primary source. And I just feel like I've sat here patiently and I've waited 31 minutes before we talk about it. And I just feel like that it's a really great time to start mentioning it. But my primary source happens after ratification.
Long time, yeah.
So a long time after ratification. So
not that long, 2 years, but
what?
About a year and a half.
True. And in that time, things moved a little slower. Life didn't come at you so fast like it does today. But so we finished the video, the Constitution, it's ratified by the convention. It gets sent out to the states. There are some debates. Not everybody's necessarily in favor.
Not everybody's on board, especially Virginia.
Right. And okay, it's because they're missing what big piece of the Constitution?
Well, there was real concerns that absent a Bill of Rights, that there would be no explicit protections for the people's rights. And this shouldn't surprise us. Actually, even though Great Britain has an unwritten constitution, there is actually a Bill of Rights that comes out in the 17th century, which many Americans are thinking about. And so when the Constitution comes out without a Bill of Rights, a lot of people who we call anti-federalists are like, what the heck is going on here? Especially Patrick Henry here in Virginia. He was like, if you don't put a Bill of Rights in here, you've got to be kidding me.
Well, the good news is he doesn't like to talk. So, it's not like he's running around shouting from the rooftops, down with the Constitution, right?
Well, which is a good joke because Patrick Henry was probably the most famous American orator of the 18th century. Yeah.
He was allowed now. He liked it. Okay, so they come up with the Bill of Rights, right? James Madison's like, hey, elect me to the government. I'll write you a Bill of Rights. We'll push it through. So
right. The agreement is that if there is a Bill of Rights, then certain states will vote to approve the Constitution.
And so it's ratified. And who is elected unanimously as the very first president of the United States?
My Lord George Washington.
Oh, George Washington. Okay, that's right. And now it's time for my favorite primary source because we've kept Jennifer Lorenzo waiting long enough. It's time. And my favorite primary source in the entire collection of Mount Vernon, and curators, archaeologists, architects, please don't be mad at me. We're still buddies. But my favorite primary source in the entire collection is this. And James, what is this primary source?
So this is commonly known as the Acts of Congress. This is George Washington's personal copy of a printed constitution and the laws passed by Congress during its first session in 1789. It is a remarkable treasure. There are other copies that were given to different members of the government, but this is Washington's, and I'm sure as Sadie will explain here in a second, that there's a reason why it's particularly special. But it is we have a vault at Mount Vernon, or we have a rare manuscripts room where we keep most of our documents, but this one stays in a very special vault all by itself.
Like uber lockdown, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like in a vault, in a vault, in a vault, in a vault that's somewhere on the property that no one tells me for fear of, exam.
I've never seen the real thing. I don't know. I've never seen it in person.
But yeah, okay. So Jim just did a great job explaining this. So this is the copy that George Washington had of the acts of Congress, and so it's all the laws passed by the first Congress. There's Washington's book plate, but in the beginning of that, as Jim mentioned, I'm doing a really great job here of going through the pages. In the beginning of it is a typed out transcript of the Constitution, right? So the original document, all 7 articles. And what I love about it is that Washington, a man not known for writing in his books, not known about writing in his margins, writes in the margin in this source. Okay, I don't know why I'm going so slow through here. He writes in his source, in the margin, certain areas under the spaces about the Constitution. And so that's what Jim and I want to talk with you guys about today. Are the notes, because I think Jim, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now that this is up, although I will zoom in so that you all can see an example. We've highlighted it and of these little tiny notes that Washington makes in the margins. Mm-hmm. And what I love about this, I mean, so many different reasons, is that, just because the Constitution was ratified and just because people were elected to office, doesn't mean everyone immediately knew what to do.
Sure.
Right? I mean, it doesn't mean, we look to these leaders that everything they did, like, they knew what they were doing, like everything, it was supposed to happen that way. But they were still learning too, right? They were still figuring out what their job descriptions were, what their responsibilities were, what was happening. And Washington does the same thing. He's not excluded from this. We don't get a lot of that from him through his writings or anything, but through this book we do. And what's great is that anytime he's trying to learn about his position or figure out what's going on, what does he do? He goes back to the source. He goes back to the primary source of his job, of the Constitution. And I just get too excited. I'm going to have to let you talk for a little bit and I'll pull this up. Because I just think that's incredibly awesome. Mm-hmm. That even Washington, when he, what he's turning to really answer those questions.
Well, it's a great point, and I think it really speaks to something we had just touched on during just briefly about the ratification debates. The Constitution was not a foregone conclusion, and one of the reasons why those debates were so intense is because the Constitution itself was so vague, intentionally so, because that was really the only way it was going to get passed, that people didn't necessarily agree about what it meant. And so there were a lot of questions. Even when the government comes into operation, people like George Washington are trying to figure out, what the heck am I supposed to do?
Yeah. No, I was just sharing that a teacher, it gives her goosebumps, historical goosebumps too. And so I think that that's an incredible, so I thought we'll put the source up, because I would love first of all, I love that everyone is commenting on Washington's handwriting and how his is easy to read, because Jesse was actually here last week talking about how hard it can be as a researcher, as a historian, to read the 18th century handwriting. Yeah, but Washington's is absolutely really nice.
Well, he practiced a lot. It was a lot different as a younger man. He has a much different signature, and so maybe sometime we can pull up on a future live stream comparing his handwriting as a younger person to what he ultimately became. Yeah, write that down.
I'm gonna write that down.
Future live stream idea.
Future live stream idea. Okay, great. So, and Jim, okay, so I'm gonna pull up the source now so that we can take a look at it. But
That's
maybe what I would love for you to see or to maybe discuss is actually some of the actual passages that Washington is commenting on, because what I want to show here. So this first one that we're looking at, I'll zoom in again. Oops. I'm going to give everybody motion sickness. But this first passage that we're looking at is under Article 1.
Right.
So we're still in Article 1. It's Article 1. It looks like we're in Section 7. And if I learned anything from our award-winning video that we just watched, Article 1 is explaining the legislative branch, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why is he commenting on that?
Well, sure. And just as I get started, I just want to just say that everything I know about this particular document actually comes from my friend and colleague, Lindsay Travinsky, who's done a lot of work on this. And she's written an encyclopedia article for us, which you can read on our digital history website. And she also has a new book out about the cabinet. And so check that out as well. What Washington is doing here is he's going through in Article 1 and identifying his role in the legislative process. So it says here, every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, presented to the President of the United States. And he can either sign it or veto it. And so Washington is going through here and seeing what his role is as part of that legislative process. What powers does he have as president to actually make a law come into effect or reject it and send it back to the legislature?
Okay, so even though, okay, so and that is, Jim, I wonder if our viewers can help us with this.
Sure.
That term, where one branch has some power over the other, so that, like, an example, not every bill that the legislative passed becomes a law, because what's that term where, each branch has a little bit of authority over the other? It's like on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. Think back to your Schoolhouse Rock days.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Hill sitting on a hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh gosh, just what is that terminology? They're typing. I can hear it. So
Yeah,
it's coming.
Yeah. After this is over, I have to go write some checks.
Oh wow.
And then
There. Okay.
the book. There you go.
All right. Look at this. Our chat is officially blowing up with it. Adam's even finishing your song for you.
Well done.
Yeah. So this is the checks and balance, right? So what he's kind of looking at here is.
Yeah, and you look real closely. He actually writes out the word president.
Right there.
It's really hard to see, but he's.
I'm going to get real close in there. Can you guys see it?
Right there.
Right there. Yeah, so I think that's great. So that's him calling that out. Now, there are a couple other times, here, within, Article 2 that he pulls out other examples of presidential checks and balances that he has, but I'd love to skip ahead and talk about some of the information he pulls out from Article 2, or I shouldn't say pulls out, highlights in Article 2, items that he, really truly finds, because Article 2 is his job description, right? Article 2 is laying out what's important for him to know in his role. And so these sections I think are great because he's not just writing president next to these pieces of information.
Yeah, here is where he gets very specific. And here is also where he is deciding, or he is figuring out what he absolutely must do, what the Constitution mandates he do, or what he may do if he so chooses to do so.
And I'm going to zoom in on a little bit, but how do you know how he's deciphering between that?
Oh, great. So if you look here at section 2, when it's talking about his powers of commander-in-chief, when he's talking about getting advice and consent from the Senate, and when he's talking about appointing different officers of state, it says they're presidential powers. So it's outlining, it's specifying, what his basic obligations are. He has to appoint officers. He has to get advice and consent from the Senate before a treaty. He has to establish, as long as the law allows, establish and participate in the creation of heads of departments and courts of law, things like that. But then you look at section 3, and here's the really good stuff, right? And then he writes next to this thing, and it says required. Section 3 says, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union, and to recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. So the Constitution says that he must, from time to time, and so we usually do it every year, but from time to time, he must report to Congress on the state of the Union and to recommend specific policy measures that he thinks are best for the government as a whole to pursue. And that's part of his obligation also, he must also, he may convene both houses of Congress if he believes it's absolutely necessary in a crisis. And he shall receive ambassadors, so he has to perform his functions as the nation's top diplomat, and that he, most importantly of all, must take care that the laws will be faithfully executed in the United States. So these are the things he absolutely must do and is mandated by the Constitution itself. So the big thing we can talk about here is, we talk a lot about originalism. What was the original intent of the founders, right? Here you can clearly see that even George Washington is learning on the job. He has to figure out if there is such an original intent, or if he himself, by writing in the margins, is creating that interpretation, that intent. So it's a marvelous source. He barely writes any words in this thing, but you can tell a lot from what he is doing.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's I think what gives me, as April called them, the historical goosebumps is, I mean, you're seeing his thought process come to life in this, and you're seeing his, he has nobody in this role to look towards. He has no one to be there to explain to him what to do. This is his only guideline. So he's looking back in it, and he's kind of using these to decide, again, as you said it perfectly, what's required and what's in my powers, but it's not fully written in stone so that I can make I can put my own flair, because maybe Washington had some flair, put his own flair and spin on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look back to section 2 again. He may require the opinion. He may do so. He doesn't say he shall. It says he may. So he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officers in each of the executive departments. Well, he uses that power, or that potential power, to actually create what we now call the cabinet. I mean, that's one of the ways in which we have what we now call a presidential cabinet. That it goes back to that constitutional interpretation.
So that's what this stems for. So the Constitution is giving him an example, like he can take advisors from the Senate. And I know that he tried a couple times and then realized, kind of turned back to his experience in the Revolutionary War, and the war councils he created, and really put together a more close, or I guess like closer to him, an executive branch level cabinet.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, he did try to, he took advise and consent literally. And as part of negotiations with the Creek Native American nation, he actually takes those treaties. He literally goes to the Senate and seek their advice and consent. And the Senate's like, "What are you doing here, buddy? You really probably shouldn't be here." And so Washington was like, well, I'm not coming
I
back.
think that's a direct quote. Hey, bud, what's
Yeah.
going on?
So, like, whoa, buddy, no.
And Jim, I think just to recap for viewers, because I think Bill brings up a good point. Like, so all of this is not just before he goes into office. He's doing this while he's right. I mean, this is a constant, like, facing new hurdles, like as they're coming at you type of thing.
Yeah, they're all trying to figure this out. And to Bill's question, did Washington have the acts of Congress with him as president? Yes. And actually, he has it created and printed for him after the first session of Congress concludes. So the winter of 1789, 1790, that's when this gets printed. And so he is sort of, you can imagine when Congress is out of session and things are slowing down, he is sitting at his writing desk, potentially by candlelight, going through this document, making these marginal notations, trying to figure out what exactly he is supposed to do.
Yeah. And I just I know we're getting close on time. I don't want
2 hours. Let's go for 2 hours. Let's just do it.
But what? Let's spend 3 hours. Let's make Teaching Tuesday a 4-hour marathon, and we're only going to look at this primary source because it's my favorite. But I think that a great wrap up is kind of not really wrap up, but go like what Adam is saying here, that he's reading the documents to see how it's supposed to work, right? Like, so he is adding his own touch, he is adding his own flair, but he's always still going back to that primary source and pulling that information, and putting his own spin, but making sure it's within those margins, right? Like making sure that it's within the powers trusted to him by the Constitution. And I'm going to pull this up also, just so we're clear, people are very much in favor of Teaching Tuesday going all day. So the comments are just blowing up that we're now, Jim, you and I are in it for the long haul.
Well, I would say my only obligation is later this evening, I'm helping to run our Book Talk Tuesday live stream with Colin Calloway, who's talking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, tell us more. What a plug.
You like how that happened?
Just a smooth little transition, Jim. Just a smooth little transition.
Yeah. Well, we're talking with Colin Calloway this evening about his new book on George Washington and Native Americans. And so a lot of what Washington is doing as a consequence of working with the Creeks and the peoples there that helped to create some of the things that Washington is doing in this document and create the cabinet will be in Professor Calloway's book. So 7 p.m. this evening.
So it just all fits together. I'm also going to use this as a little plug because as our Teaching Tuesday veterans know, and so to fill in for our first-time viewers, everything that we share with you guys here on Teaching Tuesday is online, right? It's online, free to access for everyone. And you can see right here, the website is mountvernon.org/online learning. And so I'm just gonna, so this is it, right? This is our page. The award-winning video, A More Perfect Union, that we saw is under our video series. We just pulled up the most incredible primary source, in my humble opinion, which says a lot because we got a lot of great sources, but from our primary source area here, and especially from our special collections. But another thing, another page that I would like to share for our teachers, if we scroll down a little bit, our lesson plans and extension activities, because the video A More Perfect Union really truly is a great video for younger kids, older kids. I mean, I think as Jim mentioned, it's visually a great way that it explains everything. It's easy to digest. And so on our pages, as you can see here, we have, I'll just keep sharing my screen because we're really good at that. We have the video to watch, but we have quizzes that go along with it because there's a lot of heavy vocabulary. tyranny, sovereignty, delegates listed in this video. So we have quizzes that talk about vocabulary to help, quizzes that pull out more information about the articles based on the video. And then there are also on our lesson plan page some great lesson plans where we've had teachers create these for us that they use in their class, where students are actually using this video, the Constitution, and then Washington's Acts of Congress to write him a job description or to learn more about it. So I just wanted to take this time and plug these resources too. And so I'm just loving all these comments because people want us to go on forever and ever, and I know we can't. But please visit our website, Online Learning. It's got great resources to pull through. Jim's amazing podcasts that he talked about are listed on there. So as he mentioned, they're not rated E. They're family friendly. They're for everyone. So definitely take a listen to those. And Jim, thank you so much for coming on. This was incredible. I can't believe I just happened to catch you at a great moment, looking so nice.
Isn't that amazing? I just
Getting out at home.
decided to put on a coat and tie today, and it just worked out.
God, what a coincidence. You must have just had that feeling that the acts of Congress was near and and you just wanted to dress up for it.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I wore my best teaching sweater, so definitely needed that. I'm going to build a little suspense. Please come back next week. I know Jim mentioned come back tonight. Jim, I'm still going to plug that. Come back tonight for the book talk. But next Teaching Tuesday, I'm phoning 2 more friends. And it's incredible teachers that are part of our George Washington Teacher Institute Network, 2 amazing individuals, Keith Robinson and April Watkins. And we are going to be discussing one of, I believe, the most important, but also one of the most difficult primary sources to read from Washington, and that's his farewell address. So we are going to take that document that is like, put it into digestible pieces and really walk through and do a great analysis of it to figure out what meanings and warnings Washington's putting in for the country, why it's important to study, and why it's important today. So I'm going to give a little bit of a teaser for that. Keith and April are very excited. We're going to rock it. Might be hard because we rocked it pretty hard today, Jim, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Can I come back as long as I avoid entangling alliances?
I don't know. I mean, can we do 2-on-2? Like, I don't know. That's but Jim, as one of my best friends at Mount Vernon, you're welcome back anytime. Your expertise here is beyond awesome. So thank you, viewers, Teaching Tuesday friends. Thank you guys for showing up. I can't believe this was like episode number 7. So you guys are awesome, and I'm so happy you're staying healthy, staying safe, staying at home, and we're gonna see you next week. Yeah?
Sounds great.
Okay, Jim, you're gonna have to get used to this. My goodbyes go on for 15 minutes. So, but this is it. This is the final.
This is the hard out.
Good night and good luck.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks to everyone out there for all your terrific comments and questions.
Goodbye.